She came home early from a business trip and found her husband in bed with her own mother, and the whole family had known for 3 years. Yeah, you heard that right. Let me take you from the very beginning. My name is Putu, and this is the story of a woman who returned home one day earlier than planned from a business trip, only to walk in on her husband in their marital bed with her own mother. What she discovered next was even more devastating. The affair had been going on for 3 full years, and every single member of her family had known about it and helped keep it hidden from her. Her name was Amelia. She was 34 years old, a successful marketing director who traveled often for work. She had been married to Jonathan for 7 years. They had built what everyone around them called a beautiful life. A spacious house in a quiet neighborhood, 2 cars, shared vacations, and a circle of friends who envied their relationship. Amelia's mother, Margaret, had always been very close to the couple. She lived just 20 minutes away and often came over to help with the house, cook meals, or simply spend time with them. Amelia trusted her mother completely. She was the one person Amelia believed would never betray her. Jonathan had always been affectionate toward Margaret. He called her mom, helped her with repairs around her house, and often said how lucky he was to have such a wonderful mother-in-law. Amelia found it sweet. She encouraged their closeness, believing it was healthy for a family to be so bonded. Her father had passed away years earlier, so Margaret had become even more involved in their lives. She knew every detail about Amelia's work trips, Jonathan's schedule, and even the small arguments they sometimes had. Amelia never once questioned why her mother always seemed to know exactly when Jonathan was home alone or when Amelia would be away for the weekend. She simply thought her mother cared deeply about them. Amelia had been away on a 4-day business trip in another city. On the last evening, the final meeting ended much earlier than expected. She decided not to tell Jonathan she was coming home a day early. She wanted to surprise him. She bought his favorite flowers and a bottle of the wine they both loved. During the drive home, she kept smiling to herself, imagining how happy he would be to see her. She even practiced the way she would quietly open the door and sneak up on him for a kiss. She arrived home just after 10 p.m. The house was quiet, except for a faint sound coming from the second floor. Amelia smiled, thinking Jonathan might be watching a movie in bed. She left her suitcase by the door, took off her shoes, and crept upstairs with the flowers in her hand, ready to surprise him. As she reached the bedroom door, she heard 2 voices, soft, intimate, familiar. One was Jonathan's low laugh, the other was her mother's voice. Amelia froze for a second, her hand hovering over the door handle. Then she slowly pushed the door open. The sight that greeted her would stay burned into her memory for the rest of her life. There, in the bed she had shared with Jonathan for 7 years, was her husband and her own mother. Margaret was lying on her back, her hair spread across the pillow. Amelia had bought her for Mother's Day 2 years earlier. Jonathan was on top of her, his hands on her waist, kissing her neck the same way he had kissed Amelia countless times. The room smelled of her mother's favorite perfume, the one Amelia had given her last Christmas. The sheets Amelia had washed and changed just before leaving for her trip were now tangled around their bodies. For several long, agonizing seconds, no one moved. Jonathan's eyes met Amelia's. The expression on his face was not just guilt, it was pure terror. Margaret let out a small, broken sound and pulled the sheet up to her chin, her eyes wide with panic. Amelia stood there, still holding the bouquet of flowers she had bought for her husband. The petals trembled slightly in her hand. In that single moment, Amelia's entire world fractured. The man she had loved and trusted for 7 years was in bed with the woman who had given birth to her. The mother who had held her as a child, who had cried at her wedding, who had called her every single day to ask how she was doing, was now lying in her daughter's bed with her daughter's husband. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, that Amelia couldn't even find the words to scream. She simply stood there, flowers in hand, staring at the 2 people who were supposed to love her most in this world. Amelia stood frozen in the doorway of her own bedroom, the bouquet of flowers she had bought for her husband still trembling slightly in her hands. The soft glow from the bedside lamp cast long shadows across the walls she had painted herself 2 summers ago. The air was thick with the familiar scent of her mother's perfume, the same one Amelia had given her every Christmas for the past decade, mixed with the unmistakable smell of intimacy that now turned her stomach. The bed she had shared with Jonathan for 7 years, the bed where they had planned their future, where they had laughed, cried, and made love, was now occupied by the 2 people she trusted most in this world, her husband and her mother. Jonathan's face drained of all color the moment his eyes met hers. He looked like a man who had just seen his entire life collapse in a single second. He pulled away from Margaret so quickly that the sheets slipped, and he scrambled to cover himself, his movements clumsy and desperate. "Amelia, oh God, this isn't, I can explain. Please, just listen to me," he stammered, his voice cracking like thin ice under too much weight. Margaret, her own mother, let out a small, broken gasp and clutched the sheet tightly to her chest. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was messy and spread across the pillow Amelia had bought her as a gift. For a moment, Margaret looked smaller, older, almost fragile, but the guilt in her eyes was unmistakable. She didn't try to deny it, she simply whispered, her voice trembling, "My baby, I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to see this." Amelia walked further into the bedroom and gently placed the bouquet on the dresser. The flowers looked almost mocking now, bright, hopeful, completely out of place. She didn't shout, she didn't throw anything. She simply stood there, absorbing the scene in front of her as if trying to make her mind accept what her eyes were seeing. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. The only sound was the distant hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the faint ticking of the clock. On the wall, the same clock they had bought together on their honeymoon. Finally, Amelia spoke. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle, but every word carried the weight of a breaking heart. "How long?" Jonathan opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. 3 years. He whispered. It started 3 years ago. Amelia felt the ground shift beneath her feet. 3 years. That meant it had begun long before they bought this house. Long before they talked about having children. Long before she had introduced him to her entire family as the man she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "Sweetheart, it wasn't planned. It just happened one night when you were away on that conference in Chicago. We were both lonely. Your father had been gone for so long, and Jonathan was here, helping me with the house. And one thing led to another. We tried to stop. We really did. But it kept happening." The memories hit Amelia like waves. All those weekends when she had to work late and her mother would come over to keep Jonathan's company. All those family vacations where Margaret and Jonathan would go for long walks together while Amelia stayed back to answer work emails. All the times her father's old friends would joke that Jonathan was the perfect son and her mother would smile and say, "He really is." Her entire family had known her brother, her sister, even her aunt, who lived across town. They had all looked her in the eyes, hugged her, told her how happy they were for her, and kept the secret for 3 long years. Jonathan crawled off the bed and dropped to his knees in front of her, tears streaming down his face. "Amelia, please. I love you. I've always loved you. This thing with your mom, it was a mistake that got out of control, but you're my wife. You're the one I want to spend my life with. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll end it right now. I swear on my life." Margaret, still wrapped in the sheet, whispered through her tears, "My darling girl, I would never intentionally hurt you. You're my daughter. I love you more than anything. We both love you. We just got lost." Amelia looked at the 2 people who were supposed to be her safe place in this world. Her husband, the man she had promised to love in sickness and in health. Her mother, the woman who had carried her, raised her, and told her every single day of her life that she would always protect her. And now they were both on their knees, begging her to forgive the unforgivable, while the bed behind them still held the evidence of their betrayal. She felt something inside her chest tighten and then release, not in anger, but in a strange, quiet clarity. She looked at them both and said the only words that felt true in that moment. Amelia looked at the two people who were supposed to be her safe place in this world. Her husband, the man she had promised to love in sickness and in health. The man she had built a home with. The man whose laughter had once been her favorite sound in the entire house. Her mother, the woman who had carried her for 9 months, who had held her through every childhood nightmare, who had stood beside her at her wedding and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, my girl." Now, they were both on their knees in front of her, wrapped in the sheets of the bed Amelia had chosen with such care, begging for forgiveness, while the evidence of their betrayal still lingered in the air like heavy perfume. Amelia's voice, when it finally came, was quiet, almost gentle, as if she was speaking to frightened children rather than the two adults who had just shattered her life. 3 years, she repeated softly, tasting the words like they were made of broken glass. You have been sleeping with my mother for 3 years. While I was planning our future, while I was working late so we could afford this house, while I was telling everyone how lucky I was to have a husband who got along so well with my family, she turned her gaze to her mother. Margaret's eyes were filled with tears, her hands clutching the sheets so tightly that her knuckles had gone white. "Mom, you used to tuck me into bed and tell me that no one would ever love me the way you did. You used to say that a mother's love is the only love that never betrays. Was that a lie too?" Margaret let out a choked sob. "Amelia, my baby, I never stopped loving you. This thing with Jonathan, it started when you were away so much for work. I was lonely. Your father had been gone for so long, and Jonathan was here, helping me, listening to me. It was wrong. I knew it was wrong every single day, but I kept telling myself it would end. We both kept telling ourselves it would end." Jonathan reached out, trying to touch Amelia's hand, but she pulled away as if his skin burned her. "Baby, please," he begged, his voice hoarse. "I love you. I have always loved you. What happened with your mom? It was a mistake that snowballed. We tried to stop so many times, but every time you left for another business trip, it just happened again. Your family found out about a year ago. They confronted us. We promised it was over. They believed us because they wanted to believe us. They didn't want to destroy our marriage. They didn't want to hurt you." Amelia moved through the bedroom like a ghost in her own life. She picked up the framed wedding photo from the nightstand, the one where she was smiling so brightly in her white dress while Jonathan looked at her with what she had always thought was pure love. She stared at it for a long moment, then placed it face down on the dresser. She touched the scarf her mother had knitted for Jonathan last Christmas, the one he had worn proudly at every family gathering. She folded it neatly and laid it on the chair. Every object in the room suddenly felt like evidence in a trial she had never asked to be part of. She turned back to them, her voice still calm, but now carrying a quiet steel that neither of them had ever heard before. "So my mother, my brother, my sister, my aunts, they all knew. They sat at my table, ate the food I cooked, hugged me, told me how happy I looked, and went home knowing that my husband was sleeping with my mother. They chose your secret over my truth. For 3 years, Margaret whispered, barely audible. We thought we were protecting you, sweetheart. We thought if we said nothing, the affair would burn itself out, and you would never have to feel this pain." Amelia let out a soft, broken laugh that contained no humor at all. "You protected yourselves. You protected your image of the perfect family. You protected Jonathan's place at the dinner table. You didn't protect me." In that moment, Amelia made a decision that would change the rest of her life. She looked at her husband and her mother, the two people who were supposed to be her foundation, and she felt something inside her chest finally settled into place. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Not anger either. Just clarity. A cold, crystal clear clarity that told her exactly what she had to do. She walked to the closet, pulled out a small suitcase, and began to pack. Not everything, just enough for a few days. Jonathan stood up, panic rising in his voice again. "Amelia, please don't leave. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. We can start over. I'll end it completely. I'll never see your mother again. Just give me one chance to prove how much I love you." Amelia zipped the suitcase and looked at him one last time. "You don't get to ask me for chances anymore, Jonathan. You lost that right the first time you touched my mother, and you lost it again every single day after that when you chose to keep lying." She turned to Margaret. "And you were supposed to be the one person in this world I could always run to. Instead, you became the one person who helped destroy me from the inside." Amelia picked up the suitcase and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she paused, her back to them. "I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight. Tomorrow, I will start figuring out the rest of my life. Do not follow me, do not call me, do not show up at my work. If you truly love me the way you claim, you will give me the space I need to heal from the two people who were supposed to love me the most." Amelia came home one day earlier than planned and found her husband in the most sacred place in her life, their marital bed with her own mother. The affair had lasted 3 years. Her entire family had known and chosen silence. The betrayal was complete, layered, and devastating in ways most people can never imagine. But Amelia did not crumble. She did not beg. She did not seek revenge. She simply stood up, protected her peace, and chose herself with a quiet, unbreakable dignity. She lost a husband, a mother's trust, and the version of family she once believed in. But she gained something far greater: her own voice, her own boundaries, and the deep, unshakable knowledge that she is worthy of love that does not hide in the shadows. You can send your story to my email anytime, and I promise I'll tell it in the next episodes. Subscribe to the channel, drop a like on this video, and let the truth spread everywhere.